I'm Matthew Cox with Greenbow Farm. My wife Christina Miller and I, we run a 56-acre pasture-based meat operation. So we do beef, pork, cattle, pigs, chicken, eggs, and then we do some value-added products with the byproducts of those, including sheep. So we did move farms recently, and we moved to another farm where we had some more infrastructure, and we were able to build out a commercial kitchen where we do bone broth. And so with the kitchen edition, in the past we had done soaps and hand salves, and we had done yarn and lamb skins and all kinds of things with the byproducts of sheep and beef production. But now with the kitchen, we're trying to stay more true to the food. So we're doing bone broth, and this is an example of our bone broth operation where we simmer bone broth for 24 hours, cool it down quick, get it to the right temperature, and move it into packaging, seal it, label it, and market it at farmers markets and at our farm store there. We also do lard and tallow, where we grind the tallow or grind the fats and render them into a finished product. Kind of forgot to take some pictures during the whole process, so that's the 3-stage straining that we use, and then the labeling. And the labeling is something that we've done with following WSDA instruction. And then just some pictures of our commercial kitchen operation that we use to do the value-added products. A couple different angles, our necessary, wash, rinse, sanitize sinks. And egg washing is everything else happens in that room, including chicken processing. So we've been operating now for about going on 8 years.
Okay, now we're going to let Dorcas Young from Lesedi Farm on Whidbey introduce herself and talk about her operation. Thanks, Dorcas.
Well, my name is Dorcas Young. I'm originally from Botswana. I grew up in a big farm when I was growing up. I'm over 50 now. I moved here for 30 years ago. So I raised my children, and then we started a small farm. We're leasing land. I don't own the land. My goal is to get one and do exactly what he's doing in the farm, where you have everything in one house. And we specialize mostly, I specialize in beans because I have a knowledge about beans and how to be able to take those and turn them into product, in added value. So our farm, I lease at Tilth, and then I lease at Greenbank. So one of the things, I may not follow the outline there. I'm just going to keep talking. So with this knowledge that I have, as far as vegetables and grains, I find that there is so many things that we can do as a farmer to sustain a small farm. So I've been doing this for almost now 10 years, leasing lands, doing this. And I develop products based on kale and on beans. So I develop like shake and bake. Why I did that? Because most of the time you find the food doesn't have a nutritional value. So kale is a very good vegetable to add into those things. So I develop kale chips, and then I sell those. And I develop sauces that are made out of pumpkin seeds, and then I use the herbs that I grow to add to that. Like garlic, I'll grow those, and I add those into the sauces and into the kale chips. So those are the beans. I grew about 7 kinds of beans. With that, there's challenges in the Northwest because the beans they need hot and heat. So I took a lot of classes with the Seed Alliance and all that, trying to figure out how to climatize some of the seeds that I grew up with, and I brought them 30 years when I moved here to be able to grow them. So I did all that. And then I didn't make like how I process the products, but I went to school to develop those products through University of Washington, School of Food Science in Corvallis, and in Pullman, School of Science, to be able to develop acidified products, which takes a lot of work to do, and a licensing that comes with that, inspection that comes with that. It's a lot of things. So I did 3 years from 2007 to 2010 before I developed those, to take the class to have knowledge So I did all that stuff. And that, I'm a board of, I work with him in NABC, Northwest Agricultural Services. Why I'm there? In 2016, I applied for a grant because I was thinking as a farmer, and 5 children, I'm thinking, well, they are growing up, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have to go work. Well, I have to do something, I applied for grant. 2016, I worked with Jeff and Melissa Mola. We group together, we get people to come in, they sign up, we work with them. I stayed there on the course. It was intense, hard, paperwork, all that. It takes a lot. So I stayed there, and I keep going, and I keep going, and I got it on September, and that sustained me to be able to have those kale chips, to be able to do the product and keep going, which I am now at Pike Place, and I'll sell those. But it's a small production. It's not a big production. We're not there yet until we get a farm where we can grow more products. So in the meantime, I'm involved in the South Whitby High School. 2017, the students, they came there with their teacher from the agricultural department in the school. They wanted to know about what I'm doing. Teaching these kids, I realized, it's not everybody who knows where the food are coming from. Even our kids don't know. So they were marveled at the beans, and they look at the beauty. Some of these kids created art out of the beans. I was so impressed by this high school student. So that's the thing, and the children, they will come. We get a group from India. They came to my farm in 2017. I don't have that picture there. That's my granddaughter there. I'm teaching her how to shell beans. She has never been in a farm. She was born here. They have no knowledge. So I'm trying to give her something to know, like, that tribe, the way they were talking about teaching their kids how things should be learned before and modernization. Those are the things that I kind of incorporated with that. So, and I taught some people from Asia, Japanese students. One of the pictures was there. They're from Japan. We had fava beans. They didn't know how to do fava beans. They were amazed, what is this? So I showed them how to thresh beans without electric motor. By using traditional way, you put them down, you pound them with your stick. You pound them with your stick. Then you get a bean, then you shell it out, then you eat it. They said, well, can you eat this? They say, yes, you can. So they ate that, and the feedback was just amazed how much children will learn something. And then they carried on. They carried on. They keep asking questions. Then eventually in school, they even know because they've seen it somewhere. So those are the things that I do as a farmer. And why I do the added value. I don't know many of you, as a small farmer, it's hard to sustain financially with a farm. Just kind of growing and selling vegetable fresh at the farmer's market, it's really difficult. I've done that. Some you can do it, some you can't, but you come back with a lot of them. And what do? Well, my idea was that, I have to change the state of the kale or carrots or something. You can do all that. As long as you can take classes, you can be able to do those things. And the WSDA, the NABC, they are there to help people to learn this thing. And you can sustain your little small farm by doing those things. So for me right now, I am just a farmer leasing land. My plea is, can somebody help me find a farm so that I can have everything in the house, and then I can teach and share the knowledge like those people in there. They were sharing the knowledge about Mother Earth, about sustainability, about us being one unit in this planet. That's all the purpose I have. My children are almost grown, but they are still coming back. They are helping me with a lot of the stuff that I do. I can't do it without my kids. They are helping. And I'm not big in the market. I mean, social media, you can find me a little bit. I'm not quite big there, but the things that I'm doing, it's that knowledge to share. And I want to thank everyone else. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dorcas.
I'm Roxanne Hudson from Spring Rain. We're in Chimacum, out on the Olympic Peninsula is where we are. My husband John and I own the farm, and we have usually every year a crew of about 5 people who make it all possible. John is the main farmer, and then I tend to do the bookkeeping and marketing, and then I also handle all the licensing, the organic certification, and then the value-added processing, which is, I think, why I'm here. We started in 2008, so we haven't been doing it all that long. And when we bought the property, it was a long-abandoned, overgrown farm that used to have cows, I think, and hay. So it had been hayed to death, basically. We have been focused on being really diverse. This is a very diversified farm, and we raise meat, we raise berries, we raise orchard fruit, and we have greenhouses that we do a lot of work in. And one of the things we're really excited and proud about, are our unheated geothermal greenhouse. There's an example of it. It's set 5 feet down into the ground, and then we also have raised beds that act like a thermal mass to hold the heat during the day and then radiate at night. So during the summer, we've been raising hot weather crops, and then in the winter, we've been raising, those are bok choy that just got started the other day. And it has been such a powerful thing in terms of raising really good food with no real resources other than the sun, that we just started a second one. So it's right there. And with that one, we're actually pumping air. We're going to pump air into the ground and store heat there and then have it come up either warmer or colder, depending on the season. And that's allowed us to grow year-round because the Olympic Peninsula is pretty mild out there. We have 11 greenhouses, actually. One of our main goals is to have things when other people don't. So we're usually trying to be early or late. And then our other main goal is to have things year-round. We sell in Ballard, and so we want to have product all year round with that. So in the winter, it's salad greens mostly, and then in the summer, it's hot, mostly heirloom tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, that kind of thing. We're just starting to play around with figs because it's a good crop for our area, but the temperatures vary so much that we're trying to think about how to do that. All of our greenhouses are unheated, so we have to kind of think about temperature fluctuations there. So we also raise chicken, ducks, and turkeys, and they are actually integrated, an integral part of what we do. They live in our apple and orchard and pear orchards, so they provide fertility. They do our IPM for us and make sure they eat everything that's out there. They eat the diseases and bugs. They also mow our grass for us, which is handy, and so we try very much to close loops on our farm quite a lot. And so we bring our fertility in the form of chicken feed, and then they produce the manure that we compost and put on the rest of the farm. And that's actually one of our value-added products is the chicken and the duck and the turkey. We have also been raising, good Lord, rabbit. We've been working with rabbit for a while now. And we've been trying different systems. We tried pasture hutches, which were too hard for us to scale up to large enough production. We've been using cages, and I went through an enormous amount of effort to import those little floors from China. So if anyone's raising rabbits and wants some little floors, I have some. And now we're working with a floor system, having them down on the floor in larger groups so they have more room to move and hop and do the things that they do. So that's another one of our products that we have. And then the other thing that we do is we raise a ridiculous amount of fruit. We have every kind of berry you can think of. And John particularly likes unusual berries, so we have lots of different kinds of currants and gooseberries, and then strawberries, boysenberries, marionberries, blueberries, you name it. And one of the things that happened when very early on was we realized that we needed to have something to do with the berries we couldn't sell. They're ridiculously perishable. Raspberries, you've got 3 days basically to get them out of the field and into someone's hands. And so from the very, very beginning, we started making jam. And you can see the progression of our jam. So I printed those labels on my printer, and I put them on those jars, and we sold them, and people loved them. We tried different sizes, tried different recipes, but we make them with honey. So our jams are pretty much fruit, honey, and pectin. That's what they're made out of. And that's been a really good niche for us, for people who are trying to avoid sugar. And we then moved to a printed label by a professional, but just one color because we were trying to save money. And now we're moved to a multicolor kind of label that we've been happy with. We also discovered that we had a lot of other things we couldn't sell, so kale, cilantro, basil, those sorts of things. So we started making pestos. And we made lots of different flavors of pestos. Now we're down to 3, basil, nettle, and lemon basil, I think. And the same thing with herb salt. We started making those. I tried some salts from France and really liked them and thought I could figure out how to do it. And then this year, for the first time, we're trying tomato sauce. So we're going to be doing organic tomato sauce. And we rent a kitchen. We don't have a kitchen on the farm. We rent one, which makes it really difficult and creates all sorts of challenges. But it was the one way we could get going and start doing our value-added producing. We're in the process, and if you want a long, drawn-out, horrible story of how to get a kitchen on your farm, I can talk to you about it. But we're in the process of getting that set up, and we just got our septic in. So that's what we do. Thank you. That was very kind of you.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I guess our farm is Local Color Farm and Fiber. I guess probably going to talk about one of the non-food value-added things that you could do. So I guess, so we're in the Puyallup Valley and moved to this new property last year. And I guess the three things that I grow are sheep. We do market veggies from like May until December, and then natural dye plants. So for sheep, I guess things that we do right now, sell a lot of breeding stock. They're all registered Finn sheep. And custom meat sales, so WSDA. And then yarn, fiber products, and sheepskins. And then I guess, so the other component for the fiber side is the dye plants. Examples. And I guess a little bit about the value chain of fiber, which I guess I sort of knew when I went in, but like learned very quickly. So I guess the more you do, the bigger your market is, right? So like for just raw wool, it's somewhat hard to sell a lot of it without going into like a pool and like having it worth what it is to like shear. And so I guess I get it processed down to yarn and occasionally into finished objects, right? It's like everyone will buy a hat, but not many people will buy like spinning fiber or even yarn. And then on the dye plant side, I almost never sell just dye material, which for dye plants, it's what I grow. It's like leaves, flowers, and roots of certain plants. And then I take it all and dye our yarn, and then also some other objects to try to widen that market. And then sort of increasingly doing a lot more workshops and experiential experiences for people who are interested. And I guess so for on the yarn side, the things that I do is I dye the yarn from our animals, and then I also buy in yarn from other Western ranches and resell it after dyeing. And then I've also been doing some like custom dyeing for other brands and yarn stores. So I guess this area is actually a really good spot to be a knitter. And so a lot of people come and visit the yarn stores and they want something really local. So this is my offering. And then of the other things that I dye, I guess some home textiles, so tea towels and tote bags, merch. And then I also dye for other artists like basket weaver, and I also do a lot of like silk ribbon for wedding florists, really specific, but and then I guess increasingly we're doing more workshop type events, both on farm. I teach through other schools sometimes, like there's one in Portland called Wildcraft Studio that I've taught classes through them, and so they handle the registration. And then I guess I just get the teacher's salary for that. And then I have done a couple corporate outings where people just want to do a different activity, right? So, which is interesting. And for the yarn side, the marketing, I'm mostly for the yarn. We do a lot of fiber-specific events and like holiday type markets. So I guess that's coming up. And I do wholesale to yarn stores. We have a online store, and then I guess new this year is I started like a fiber CSA, 3 shipments with a pattern and some other like local goods. So there it is.
Awesome.
So.
Ben, first of all, what led you to the decision to make and sell these products, to go from being straight up producers to deciding to take some of your product and add value to them? Anyone, feel free to jump in.
We had been making, with animal products, we had ended up with fiber, and we had done yarn for a while, and that market is pretty narrow. We ended up with a lot of byproducts, such as fat and bones and things like that. And we were making soap and hand salve and things, but those are pretty low level. Turns out those were fairly low level line items for the amount of effort to produce and then market those. And having a background in food and being so committed to local food and nutrition and everything, we really wanted to get back to the food thing. So the bone broth was kind of a natural process. And moving from one farm to the other farm where we had a little more infrastructure, we were able to take an old dairy barn and turn it into a commercial kitchen, was kind of the little twist that we needed to make that jump. And then learning how to work with all the different entities, USDA, WSDA, and county health, and some of them we have not leapt into yet, but being able to get that ball rolling and create a product that we had the potential of selling every week versus certain times of the year. So, and that's been a big boon. It's allowed us to use the byproducts in a efficient way and get more value and more income to the farm.
Do you freeze your bone broth?
Yeah, goes right to the freezer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear these guys up here? Okay, good. Anyone else? Dorcas, you want to?
Well, my decision for really jumping into added value products is that as a farmer, small farmer, micro farmer, is that you will have all this fresh vegetable, you have root vegetable, you have all this. And then at the end of the day, you sell them at the farmer's market, you come back probably with a bunch of them. And then what do you do when you look at the cost and then the sustainability of your farm? Only season for those fresh vegetables, they will be there. But what about after the season? What do you do? Because you gotta sustain the bills, they will keep coming for your farm to pay. But with the value-added products from the farm, whether it's a root vegetable, dehydrated, or pickled, or canned, or pesto, or any of that, they have a shelf life if they are acidified. If they are frozen, they have a shelf life. So they can sustain the farmer to keep going for year round. That's the reason why I ended up doing dehydration and acidified products. So then I'm moving into frozen. So I'll have those 3 categories that during the season I can sell vegetable fresh, but I have as well as frozen, which customers, they can always come back and buy, and it continue to sustain financially the farm.
Yeah, we're in the same decision making. We're taking very perishable things and making them something that will store. And we planted our pear and apple orchards 9 years ago, and this was the first big harvest. So just wait 9 years, and then you will get your crop. And same with the blueberries. We planted those 9 years ago. And so now we're looking at cider and juicing and trying to think about how to manage that. But it's exactly the same thing. If you have an extremely perishable product and you come back from market and you're thinking, what do I do now? that's where it came from for us. We just can't bear to waste food.
Yeah, so I guess I am sort of my own target audience. So I am an enthusiastic knitter, and I just like became more aware of, like, similar to you like become aware more about your food, like becoming more aware about textiles. And so when I started dyeing yarn, like 2012, 2013, it wasn't as available, like a single source, breed specific, naturally dyed yarn. And so I was like undergoing those feelings, and so I thought like probably other people were as well. Yeah, so I guess that's what sort of led me to start selling. And the advantage is yarn is like super not perishable. So I guess I dry most of the dye materials through the summer, and then like now is the yarn season for me. And so like without the yarn, I like can't do the vegetables really. And so it's really that provides all of my like spring startup income. Yeah, so it's a push-pull, I guess, relationship. So.
Thanks. And can you all address some of the challenges you faced in getting your value-added production up and running? Licensing issues, marketing problems, just anything that you encountered and what you did to get through that.
So I'll answer that one because we've had quite the experience. We have city water, our PUD water, so we met that obstacle really nicely, and we don't have to have the well testing and all that. And we have an existing septic that we thought would work really well, but our county, and I say this because your county may be the same, won't let us use a domestic septic for commercial purposes. And even though we had an engineer say it would be fine and it met all the requirements, it wasn't going to work. So we have just put in a brand new septic, and then we researched how to put in a commercial kitchen we don't have a building connected to that septic. And so we're actually looking seriously at getting in shipping containers and turning them into our kitchen. Because the county, we have a really irritating county. The county regulations don't cover the shipping container, they only cover connecting it to the ground. And so we have an approved system for that. It's very easy to do. And then L&I handles the electric, and then we're up and running. So I expect us to be moving ahead with our own kitchen on our own farm probably in March, I would guess. But in the meantime, look at your communities, because we were able to rent a kitchen at a community center, and I've been doing that for a long time. And so it's been kind of expensive and a little bit irritating to haul everything in there and then haul everything back, but it meant that we could do it, and we could do it pretty quickly.
Yeah, for me, that's the same thing. I lease the kitchen, and I'm at the point where I'm rolling my head because I'm having and hovering pots and machines and processing. I'm just kind of like, okay, well, where am I going? So the same thing, in-house, everything in-house. It will cost a lot of money, but eventually, if you have blended ahead of the game, like they have a bigger farm, you can have in-house. The licensing, you work with WSDA, you work with your county, and you can find a way of building a kitchen, not very high costly. You do your research first, and I've done all that. All I'm waiting is like if I get the land, work with the county, and then build a commercial kitchen, you can do that. Because even processing depends on the products that you are processing. Canning, low pH products like cucumbers, they don't have anything. That's part you have to work with FDA. They do a highly intensive inspection on that, and you have to do a lot of training on that. And when it comes like frozen foods, WSDA, they can work with you. Dehydration, they work with you because the moisture of the product, whatever the raw material contents, you measure those two items, they can balance it out. But when it comes to acidified, you have a lot of training. Depends on the raw material that you're going to turn into a product, value added. And then marketing those products, I think there's a lot of market for small farmers, products out there. You know, we have a big, Northwest has got amazing farmers market. I went there without knowledge, but I realized there's a lot of local people in Washington State. They understand the value of eating nutritional good food. So there's a lot of market out there for small farmers to keep moving forward. So the marketing and then the licensing, you can work with all those. And then the grants, there's WSDA have grants, NABC, they help a lot of small farmers to kind of move a little bit closer to where you can still farm as a small production. So those are the things that I list in the kitchen right now to do my dehydration and my acidified. Those kind of the two things that I'm working on to do. I don't produce a big amount just because I'm selling at the farmer's market. And it's a challenge to really do big production if you don't have a kitchen with all equipment installed in there. So those are the things that we kind of faced.
We were the same way. We tried leasing and renting kitchens for 3 or 4 years and really came up with nothing. We couldn't really find anybody that was willing to do it. And we'd go to WSDA or WSDA or the county and try to work with them to allow us to do something as simple as just like making a salt rub, which is, salts mixed with some herbs we grow. You got to have a commercial kitchen, 3-bay sinks, hand wash sinks, the floor drains, everything. And so that was a lot of a challenge. And then, when we did find this new property and just kind of decided to go for it, this, rundown dairy barn, which had no doors, windows, had a tree through the roof. It was one of the top 5 factors, and over the period of a year or two, we were able to turn it around and make it into a commercial kitchen. Working with the different entities was really challenging, and I'm just starting to get a handle on it. Whereas WSDA, they're not really for a retail food-ready consumption. They're more for wholesale, things you're going to package and label and send out the door, and resell as a wholesaler or direct to consumer, like at a farmer's market, which that can be a little bit of a gray area for them as well. And then at the county level, they're the ones that can let you do the more prepared foods and things like that. Unfortunately, all the regulations are made, on the federal level through FDA and USDA, and then the states sort of adopt those and enforce those. And at the county level, that's where they seem to want to set themselves apart, and each county can make up whatever rules they want. And so you come into all these just crazy rules that they want to enforce that the other higher entities don't call for. So that can be a little challenging, and your inspector can be a little challenging. One thing I learned is that if you're having problems with an inspector that doesn't really want to work with you, you don't have to try to work it out with them. You can go to their supervisor and say, hey, I'm having a lot of trouble with this inspector. Can you send me a different inspector? Sometimes they just have a bend in their, personality, and they just want to make trouble. So you can always request a different inspector. That was something I learned,
Yeah.
Don't fight with them. Just take it to the top.
I guess challenges for marketing yarn, I guess, is in some cases I have to be careful not to add too much value because yarn, there's really defined industry, I guess, and so there are in addition to all the standards that are there, standard put-ups, how much yardage you typically can buy in one unit, and the different thicknesses, you have to fall within those, is being so vertically integrated. So I just need to be as efficient as possible, and sometimes it's very hard because I am involved in every step, and every step could take a long time if I wanted to, and I guess that has been the hardest thing to train someone to do is, I guess, because the margins for my way of dyeing yarn is very large because I market it as an agricultural product that's ever changing, which also goes against a lot of the standards of the yarn industry. And so getting the education to the consumers that they have to buy enough, what's available is available, and like I can try my best to replicate it, but it may not happen. Yeah, so I guess that's one challenge. And then I guess the other challenge that I think about a lot is it is like a luxury product, and I am always trying to think of ways to be able to get like this type of yarn or like material for crafting into someone who can't afford it. But yeah, haven't really come up with a good answer to that. So, but I guess our workshops, I do a couple that are sliding scale, so maybe that was my effort this year. It mostly worked out, so. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm going to combine these next two questions, and it's hard to ask farmers to be brief because, we're all so interesting and have so much to say and are so eloquent. But we want to try to save some time I want to hear from all of you too. We're supposed to kind of jump around, but you all have such interesting, unique operations and things to impart. So just, let us know your information, but let's try to leave some time for questions at the end too. So have you received any financial help to create these products, grants, et cetera? What was this product or this process like? And then what are some of the key resources you found helpful along the way in developing your value-added product lines and processing operations?
Well, I did apply for grant in 2016, 2017, the WSDA. I didn't know where to find it first, but I kind of went online and started searching, started spending time. And then there was NABC. Then I contacted them about this class. They were offering the class. It was a boot camp, and it was through Washington State. And I just like, well, I'm going to go there and find what I can get there. There was so many, there was a good information there. And my take was that, okay, I'm going to target this and see if I come up with anything, because it wasn't like you have to apply for this big one. The window was say, well, you can get 10,000. And I said, well, if I get $5, that's good enough. And I work with $5. So I went there and I signed up for that boot camp. I took a class. And then Jeff Volz and then the NABC, they said, well, we'll put people together and see if they can take this class. We'll train them. We'll teach how to put this package together. You don't have to take a big one. So I went in there and took a class. And then I stayed with them and I said, help me. They said, yes, we'll put a class together. Everybody can pay in $50 or something like that. So I stayed in there, and it was hard. It was not an easy package to just come in there. They send it in, come back, send it in, come back. And then I stayed with it. And then at the end, I was able to get a grant to be able to sustain what I did. Just develop one product, change the state of kale chips into either vegetable rub, or I just took the kale chips and I created a formula. And then I sent it in to WSA for approval. They did that, and I've got commercial kitchen licensing, all that stuff that you needed to do. I stayed on the course, and I tell you, it saved myself. I stayed. It was not easy, but I was able to sustain, to be able to be here. Otherwise, I would not be here. I would have shut everything off and just kind of maybe go get a McDonald's job, and that's it. So instead, I went ahead and do that. And then that was most the resources and why I am here and why I do that. Now I'm doing the beans, these different kinds of beans that I'm growing, and I'm hoping to apply for another one which can sustain local grown food from here and change the state or package them. If you do that, then you can get a grant and you can keep floating. So that was my helpful, and that's how I did it, and that's why I'm here.
So we got actually a USDA value-added producer grant, which is for our chicken. So we got it for our chicken, and that's both helpful and not helpful. It took me a month and a half of reading all the stuff to understand even how to fill out the application. And the person I was supposed to ask questions of just would read me back what it said, which isn't very helpful. And I'm happy to answer lots of questions afterwards, but the biggest thing for you to understand is it didn't pay for the things I wanted it to pay for. You can't use it for equipment. You can't use it for setting up your building. You can't use it to pay me as a family member. There's lots of things you can use it for, but you can't do the things that I really needed. So we actually ended up with a loan to build the processing facility for our chicken and all the equipment. And then the value-added producer grant really helped us with paying the people who were doing the processing, paying the licensing, paying the insurance, helping us with marketing. That's why we have that nice fancy bag, is because it helped pay for that, the graphic artist, the plates that the company requires, all of that stuff. So that's really helpful. And if you're thinking about it, I'm happy to share sort of our experience with it. The other thing that was super helpful for us, which is different than Matthew, is our WSDA inspector is really helpful. She has looked at layouts of our planned kitchen and told us yes or no, or you have to move this. FDA and USDA are not allowed to tell you how to do things. They're only allowed to tell you what the standard is. But she would say things like, other farms have, and then she would tell us what other people were doing. And so that was really helpful. If you can get a good relationship with that person, she has been tremendously helpful for us.
I guess I have not applied for any like yarn-specific grants, but I'm interested. So
Value-added producer
Yeah,
grant
so-
will cover you right there.
so yeah.
Great. Shameless plug. Thanks for bringing up the value-added producer grant. If you all don't know about that, you should look into that grant program. And NABC, our organization, does a great job. We have a one-time kind of free workshop on running through the process of that grant, but then we also do, it's a fee-based over a couple months. I think that we meet, the groups meet every week, and that process actually walks you through writing the grant, with the end of the grant, your actual grant, with the end of the grant being reviewed by the actual reviewer, the USDA reviewer who reviews the grant. I was have been part of that process and been shocked about how great the USDA program is about wanting you to do a good job with those grants. They're really open with their information. If you can get into them in time, they'll actually review your grant and give you feedback. They want you to get the grant. I thought there'd be some kind of like conflict of interest with them giving you information, but it's not true. They're wonderful. So keep that in mind. It's a great opportunity.
They have money to spend.
What's that?
They have money to spend, and they want to spend it.
Most definitely, yeah. So finally, this is a couple of my own questions. Has the development of your product lines provided more consistency in your production and your production planning? And has it provided you a more consistent market outlet for your actual raw product? And then I guess I'll lump two together again. And do you sell all your products yourself, or do you sell any of your raw product to, off the farm or to other businesses that then turn your product into a value-added product? I think we actually already answered that question. Sounds like you all kind of do your own products, but so gloss over that one.
Well, I guess for the yarn, I probably sell, it's about 20% I sell wholesale to yarn stores, so which I guess I view as important because I am not always available at an event or something, and it's a really tactile product, so people like really want to touch it before they spend like sort of a lot of money on something. And so I guess I view like my wholesaling to yarn stores as like if I educate the staff really well, like they can continue the education to consumers, and then that's been quite important, actually. So,
well, we do sell some of the raw products, like taking bone broth as a specific example. We sell some bones to restaurants and things so they can make their own broths or soups or whatever they're doing with it. And then we direct market most of our bone broth, and I think we had a small grocery that was taking some of it for resale. But for the most part, we direct market all of our value-added products. I was going to say about the grants, we didn't really get any grants for the food processing or anything, but we did get grants for fencing and sprinkler conversion under NRCS EQIP, which counts. That's money we didn't spend somewhere else. So,
For me, I just I do the farmer's market with my products. There's only 2 stores that I supply. Because the limitation, it's a commercial kitchen. You have to have in-house to be able to produce so much. So because I rent the kitchen, my times and all that, and try to constrain the finances. I just do the local farmers market, Seattle, West Seattle, Pike Place, and I do all that with the products that I have. And then we have only 2 local stores that I supply, and that's it.
Same here. We sell to a very small little store near us, and then the rest of it's on farm in our farm stand, and then at farmers markets. And we just don't produce enough to want to have a big distribution thing. And then also, if you're selling wholesale, you can't charge as much, which means that we're not able to get that margin. And honestly, our margins are so small that it just doesn't make sense for us.
Thanks. At this point, let's open it up to the audience for questions.
What are the requirements for once it's been processed and before you sell it? I mean, I know about at the markets, but at home or wherever you store it. Can you store it at home in a couple of freezers in the garage? Or is there more to it than that?
Can I answer
Yeah,
just
go ahead. Yeah.
very quickly? I discovered you need a warehouse license
Yes.
for a chest freezer. We started with one single chest freezer, and we had to buy a warehouse license
Yes.
for it. And Matthew,
Knew
you
there
can
was something
continue
else.
that.
Yes.
I haven't been hit with the warehouse license yet.
I have.
You will. You
All of our
will.
things are covered under the farm product. So we're allowed to have our walk-in freezers and stuff as to store our farm product.
It's only because they haven't found you yet.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But we have, that's how we just store it. And WSDA covers that. They inspect our walk-ins and our labeling. All our labeling has to be pre-approved. So, but yeah, storage is just covered under farm and WSDA.
And the license I have is from WSDA, so we get inspected once a year for our warehouse, and we get inspected for our jam, and we also get inspected for our eggs, and we get inspected for our meat.
And it's all different people.
It's actually the same person,
Yes.
but we pay all the fees for each one of those. It used to be pretty reasonable. It was just $55, but now the warehouse license has gone up to 200 and something, which is ridiculous. But it just varies depending on how much you sell. We're always in the smallest bracket, so it's not too much.
Hi. To follow up a little bit on the frozen product, especially around the berries, I kind of assume you don't come back from market with, half flat or 2 flats and then fire up the kitchen and make jam. So will you kind of address what happens in between like a market return or wherever your surplus is coming from and getting it into a labeled end-use container? What that looks like and maybe like how you strategize the most efficient way to process that product?
So we store our berries in food-grade 5-gallon buckets in a freezer, and we usually will pick for jam if the berries are damaged. The fruit fly is a real pain in the rear. And then if we have a lot of product coming back from market, we'll process it in the kitchen that we rent. So we'll cut the stems off the strawberries, pre-measure it, and put it in bags and then in those buckets. But then we'll have to plan ahead and plan a day of processing, and so it's a bunch of those coming out. But the freezer is really the only way we can do it.
Do other operations similar to yours use that same facility?
No, they don't. You've never been to Chimicum. It's a tiny, tiny little place. It's like 1,500 people, and there's 2 commercial kitchens, one up in Port Townsend, and then Finn River Farm, if anyone knows them. They just started one, but we have been using this little community center, and so no one else really does because they have access to the other 2.
Heidi?
I'm just curious if any of you started, and I apologize, I was a bit late coming in, but if any of you started with a cottage food permit, and or if that applied to you, and how you figured out where to go to start all of the licensing. Like what was your first stop in terms of, okay, I want to do A, B, and C, and this is how I found out?
Well, we quickly learned that the cottage food licensing wasn't going to work for us because you had to have, if you're going to use your own kitchen, you couldn't have any children in it. We have children, they do what they want. And you couldn't sell, I think you couldn't really sell, you can only sell off the property. You couldn't take it to a farmer's market and sell it.
Exactly.
So we were pretty much, that was useless to us.
And the fees were so much higher than just a regular license, so we didn't even look at it. I mean, we looked into it enough to realize it wasn't a good idea, and we just didn't pursue it.
Well, for me, I started at the Bayview Farmers Market, hot prepared food, like kind of like a restaurant, they call it, So I get a permit from the Allen County, you gotta sell a soup at the farmers market for that particular day. We just did that for a while I'm researching, well, what am I gonna do if I can't sell hot food? What is the next step here? Then I started to research about processing. What should I do? I look and watch it. Then there's these classes that are offered by NABC, WSDA. I took a heck of a lot of those in Everett. All these places, I see this and I just go. They teach you about bookkeeping, accounting, all these other things. I was taking tons of classes to just find exactly what I need to do. And I finally stumbled with the NABC and then and I took this boot camp. It had everything there. How to get a license, how to be able to do processing, the schools where should you do the different kinds of processing products, this food engineering, all this stuff was right there. And I took all that material and I just subscribed and I learned. And then I started to say, well, I might look into acidified and see what happens. So that's where I started there.
I've had a couple of failed attempts at getting some items pickled in the last couple of years, and I'm wondering, of your products, do you own the process authority to those recipes, or is that something that you found and you share? Can you explain a little bit about that process?
Well, that process you have to take. When I studied, it was the University of Washington, Dr. Daugherty. I can't pronounce his name. He was the processing authority. And then Doug Marshall, he's in Portland. So I took their classes, and that class was intense. And I passed the class, the chemistry part of the chemistry of the food, changing state and testing cucumbers and peppers if they have a pH or not. It was a fun class to take. So I went and did that. And then I look at pickling. You have to do very careful with the beans and the pickle. Those are very dangerous because of botulism. So I didn't want to go there. And then I talked to the processing authority. You formulate everything and you send it to them. And they evaluate, sometimes takes 6 to 7 months or to a year, because they put it in a certain processing, which I learned when I was in Cavalas, University of Oregon, there's School of Food Science there. They put one product and it's just fascinating to see how these things are done over there. And then they will they'll send you a results and they tell you exactly what you should process that product. And you have to follow that formula. And then you send it back to them. And they put it in the lab, they test it again. And they'll tell you whether you can process or not. One of my products took about 2 years until they can say, this is your schedule, this is how you do it. And you have to follow it. And then it comes on that, you have to do registration with the FDA. They have to inspect those, it's on and on, but it's doable. The acidified, now I'm just starting to scale it down because there's so much intense of doing it. And as long as you do it small, you're okay. But if you try to get into the big market, you have to have this huge production. So that's the thing when you have to do the licensing, the processing authority, they are involved. They do everything for you. They do it, they test, they check, and they have to either give you no or yes.
So because we don't fit the definition of jam, we do not fit the definition of jam, which boggles the mind. We have to send everything to the WSDA lab, and you send 3 samples, and you send your recipe and weights and all of that, and they test it and say whether it's an acidified food or it's not. And it happens that our pepper jelly is, and so then you have to, she's mentioned several times, I took a course through UC Davis online about acidified foods, and then you get your little certificate, and you have to do all of that to do an acidified food. It is a pain in the rear, and you have to register with FDA, and they treat it as if it's a death device. it's just a real pain. But that all being said, WSDA is really helpful, and that scientist, I've been on the phone with him a bunch, and he's really helpful.
Yeah.
Got to find time to take a class, Ryan.
Well, the UC Davis one was really fast, because it's online, it's several modules, you bam through it, and you're done.
Can you say why your jam didn't qualify as jam?
We use too much fruit and not any sugar.
Yes.
It's not a preserve either, because it doesn't meet that definition.
Because you don't have
We
sugar.
have to call it a fruit spread.
Huh.
So this is mostly targeted at Matthew and Roxanne. How do you feel like your products perform in the market? Like, do you ever find space where you are out? Like ran out, like you're out of bone broth, you're out of jam.
All
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
So my other part of that is helping other farms, since you both have commercial kitchens or en route to that and are licensed. Is there opportunity for other farmers that are facing that they could be composting instead of where you would be able to purchase those goods at a reduced cost for them that maybe they wouldn't? Just kind of that support. Does that make sense at all? Say your cohorts at the farmers market are facing that they have jams of their own that they're leaving with. Are you open to those opportunities
Now I
to
understand.
buy? And how does that affect your image of your product? Because not everybody has the resources or even the drive to want to take all these steps. Does that make sense?
Are you talking about wholesaling your raw product to somebody who could process into a finished product?
Yeah, so it would, at the end of the day, you guys would get that dollar, but I work for a produce distributor, and I get to see a lot of waste in the world. But I also, my family runs a ranching operation, and something that a lot of people face is like bones. If you don't ask for your bones and your fats back from our processor, they take it and they sell it. And get the bottom line, and rather than seeing that back in our community I would rather see local businesses get that opportunity to put it back into our economy, in our market. So are those things that you guys are interested in?
For us, it's we kind of carry this product that we raised and produced and
Right.
processed all the way through the end, and we don't really do it for other people. But I mean, there's lots of other businesses that would be interested in, there's a lot of businesses that are doing bone broth and things like that would be interested. But
And
with
you-
ours, it's all about the brand.
And same with us, it's just part of an integral part of our farming. It's not that we do processing, it's that we want it in our space here. But what you're talking about is co-packing, and
No.
that's actually what we're doing with our tomato sauce. I'm driving the tomatoes down on Monday, and it's going to be made into sauce for us by a co-packer. And that's another set of licenses and registrations, and frankly, I'm not at all interested in that. But if you are interested in getting your stuff made into a product, a co-packer is probably the way to go.
Luke, you mentioned that you had a farm which you expanded to a restaurant.
Yes.
Could you expand on that for a moment?
Sure. Well, it wasn't quite. We had the opportunity to buy a restaurant. We had been managing a big farm for quite some time called Oxbow Farm. Decided that we wanted to make a change, but we're too old to start our own farm at that point, and wanted to stay in the valley and where we live and still be with food. And so we had a great opportunity to buy a restaurant that was already being operated by a family member. And it just was a way to continue growing our produce and just have a ready outlet for it and be tapped into the community and continue to support the farmers in our area. We buy a lot of product from other farmers as well. Support the Puget Sound Food Hub, the Snoqualmie Valley Farmers Cooperative, as well as a bunch of other farmers in the valley. So, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. It's called The Grange in Duval, by the way. Another shameless plug. Thanks. Kate.
Just a question about the last food. So you do the bone broth, and I notice you freeze it. You don't shelf-stable can it.
Right.
Was that a choice because of the,
It was much easier to freeze it. You know, there's no further thing. The canning is just like
Right.
The
a
canning
nightmare.
is impossible.
and
pretty
then my
much.
question for you was, you do have the pestos, which I assume are considered low acid, or are you able to acidify them?
They're not low acid
Really?
because they're a whole different thing. And since we freeze them and they're not shelf stable, we can avoid that whole problem.
Okay, so they appeared canned, that's why I was
If we
asking.
canned them, then we would be in that
Okay.
unpleasant road.
Right, okay, that answers my question.
I'm curious about the processing for lard broth. Do you guys have to slaughter USDA to be able to do that, or can you custom
Yeah, so
slaughter?
all the bones and fats that we're using are from our USDA processed animals, and almost all of our animals are USDA. We don't do the WSDA. We just can't capture enough value that way. So, in that way, value added is having your animals cut and wrapped and
Right,
selling
okay.
them. And the other thing that we used that kitchen for, the real purpose of that kitchen was to process our own chicken. And as soon as we had the ability to process our own chicken rather than hauling 500 birds to somebody else to just processing the whole birds, we were able to part up. We got a vacuum sealer, weighing scale, printing scale, and did all these things so we could do packages of chicken breasts and thighs, which gives you an option for the birds that get damaged in the plucker or whatever. So just kind of the snowball effect.
You said that you did sheepskins as well at some point?
Yeah.
Okay, now when you did those, did you have a taxidermist process those for you, or did you, how did you?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we could have a whole workshop on that. That's we were sending them off to a place on the East Coast, and they did a great job, and then we started getting them returned really heavily damaged, and we had to stop using them, and then we switched to a taxidermist, and he promised me 3 months, and that was 15 or 16 months ago. I still don't have them. So we're going to start maybe tanning our own, but it's just like finding time to do that one extra thing. It's a little challenging, but we do still produce lambskins.
Thanks a lot, everybody. I'm afraid we have to wrap it up now. Please give a round of applause for our panelists, and don't forget to fill out your evaluation forms. Thanks a lot for coming.